This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Saints Pod. My name is Greg, joined once again as always for episode 486 by my good friend and wonderful co-host Zach. And well, that sure was a game of football, wasn't it, mate?
Happy birthday to me! It's my birthday today, hence the new away shirt that my mum bought me. And, I've got the lovely third kit as well. And I was like, man, I'm really hyped to watch some football tonight. And I didn't want to go down. Similar reasons to Greg. I don't want to pay 25 quid. I know I defended it all of last episode. And that was mainly just because we're having a chat about it, to be honest. And I decided to play a bit of devil's advocate. But I was like, I don't really want to. Really glad I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm also, as everyone knows, you can tell from the background, to be perfectly honest, I'm a bit of a nerd. For the first time in my life ever, my two hobbies have clashed. There was Gamescom's opening night was being broadcast at the same time as this game. I wish I just sat and watched that. Because quite frankly, clearly nobody else wanted to turn up tonight, or at least the entirety of our ability to defend didn't turn up tonight. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, well, look, let's start at the start. We got the team news, and I mean, despite, with hindsight of the result, it's almost a joke to say this, but it was a stronger side than we were expecting.
Well,
right?
I was 2 off in my Finalysis predictions. I know that I think when we did the show, I said maybe Rorislev. I kind of changed my mind on that and thought Bree, and I didn't expect Akachukwu to come in, right? I kind of assumed it would maybe be Flynn Downs and Bragg. I thought maybe they'd start with a stronger midfield. And obviously what ended up actually happening was not that. And quite frankly, so yeah, other than that, I was pretty much spot on. But it was a stronger starting 11 than we expected. And that starting 11 didn't really work out.
No, I mean, look, a start for Cienza, who, we know has been carrying a knock, and I thought might be rested to try and catch up on that. And, just a start for Fellows, I guess it kind of makes sense. Still hard to tell whether him or Matchday or someone else is preferable out on that right-hand side.
I think it's currently Matchday, and I'm saying that because towards the end of last season it was. And I think that, these are opportunities for Fellows to go in. He had 1 or 2 good balls, but we have a song about him scoring. He's yet to score in a Saints shirt. And now I joke about you, being completely, just constantly being like, I love Fellows, your voodoo doll, right? That is just somewhere cursed in.
Put a curse on him, yeah.
The reality of the situation when it comes to Tom Fellows is that he has been good at delivering the ball, but you'd love to see that part of his game there as well. And we would need that. I don't think he was the only one at fault tonight. I think that it was just a general performance of it's a classic Saints thing. If we go 1-0 up, and then we continue to pepper them, but we don't take our chances. And then for some reason, the foot comes off the gas. And even us bringing on senior players, by that point, they just started putting us to the sword. A stupid goal from a set piece, a defensive error, another defensive error. And then eventually it's just Jared Bowen scores goals like that. That's fine. But again, it just...
Yeah, I mean, that's the only goal of the 4 that you can kind of hold your hands up and go, yeah, okay, well... Jared Bowen running at our quite tired fullback who is struggling against him and doesn't play 90 minutes normally, does a big piece of skill and scores a Jared Bowen goal. But the other 3, I mean, sure, maybe on the corner there's a foul in there somewhere, but I mean, the referee forgot his whistle, right? I don't think he actually gave anything to either team throughout the entire night. So at least he was consistent.
But also, we managed to pick up cards and they didn't. Cienza got carded after being brought down. Well, was brought down and then almost stopped from getting back up. And then when he kicked out, he gets carded. And I understand the ref didn't see it. The ref can only see what he saw. what he did see was, Cienza foul the guy, but it's understandable why it's frustrating. But again, it's we're going to talk about the things like we used to talk about when we were on that horrific losing streak during the Premier League, where again, it's just if we'd actually taken our chances, it wouldn't have been a problem. You pointed out that at one point, fellows put it on a 10 pence piece for Mumbaba to score, and he didn't. And that might just be new striker settling in, jitters, whatever. Cole Aaron's there, probably scores that. But at the same time, we didn't really want to waste Cole Aaron on the pitch. Clearly, we decided. I'm a bit baffled that we kind of put out a team to win, but also put out a team that was quite strong. Made really, really strong substitutions for then to lose 4-1, be demoralised, and have Cienza play far more of a game than I expected him to. After carrying injury on the weekend, clearly, we spoke about this. He's clearly had some knock on with the shoulder, talking about painkillers and stuff. And I'm like, I understand he wants to play every minute, but they had to do that last season to manage his minutes a bit. So I was surprised. But, he showed he just did Cienza things. He scored a really good goal. That was a positive.
Yeah. That positive just gets lost in what happened after, though, right?
It's the same with, I would say that Adozie, when he came on, had a really good game. He kept breaking away. And the amount of times he put, balls in and there's just nobody there. And you're watching how frustrated he's getting because he's managing to get in the right positions. And, he's clearly fighting to get into the side. So that is a positive I'll put forward today. I think that Bragg and Akachuk, we did a much better job than I expected them to do together in the midfield for the majority of the first half. But again, a lot of these errors are silly sort of defensive ones. And I think that, we've seen that, Jack Stevens has been scapegoated quite a lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, the problem is if he's a very obvious player that's in frame when that goal takes place and everyone expects him to do better. Like that first goal, the one with him not clearing it properly, right? All you had to do was clear it properly. That was the second one, right? That put him ahead. All you had to do was get rid of that ball. And I understand he's tried to kind of knock it on. And I don't know, maybe it's just, clearly he's just trying to keep the ball in or whatever.
We've talked before how you don't know what Jack Stevens you're going to get, and you either get a Jack Stevens who is bang on it, or Jack Stevens who's prone to a mistake. And even before that particular mistake for the goal, a moment of the game that otherwise maybe fades to nothing without these other bits adding onto it to the context. But I think back to I think it was right at the start of the second half or maybe late in the first half where, they put a quite harmless cross in, really. There wasn't really anyone attacking it, and Stevens swung a leg at it. It could have gone anywhere. It went up and into the crowd and behind for a corner, but that's not the direction he was trying to kick it. He could have just as easily flown in the top corner of the goal. It could have really gone. It just seemed he wasn't composed, which is normally something you kind of associate with him. It was
a lack of sharpness, and is that just because he's played at the weekend and they're not properly match fit to do, the level of games we're going to be playing? And obviously we're going to have a slightly few less, but I think I spoke about before the game started, right? Whether or not, I think I put it together in a tweet, basically saying the weight of expectations. Who has the higher expectation to win here? Who is expected to win? And I thought it was probably West Ham. And then they put out a pretty weak squad, and then we went 1-0 up, and we were kind of all over them. And then realistically, then it became our game to lose. And then we did it in such old fashioned Saints, where we just kind of went out with a whimper. And then the defense, the subs didn't really make much of a difference. But the big problem you've got, as you pointed out, with you don't know what Stevens you get on the night, is that I think it's probably just tiredness, a lack of sharpness. We haven't been playing games a lot recently. But it's not going to stop any of the noise about everybody's worry that realistically, if Taylor Harbour-Bellis goes, which we don't know what's going to happen with that, a lot of pundits saying it's basically over the line, but also if we're holding fast to our valuation, if they don't meet it, they're not getting the player.
Yeah,
and now there's been rumours that he's going elsewhere,
right? Saints have been clear on their valuation and Villa are not willing to reach it. So at the end of the day, unless lack of other options forces their hand to make them pay above what they want to pay, it's kind of where the conversation ends, right?
Yeah.
If they're not going up anymore and we're not going down anymore.
And then you've got apparently, there's rumours knocking around that they want to go for a player at Club Bruges instead, which I don't know, that's rumours. We don't really know the reality of that situation. But then you potentially have a player that I don't think would down tools, but I think it's going to be harder to integrate him back into the side straight away after such a big, potentially missed opportunity for somebody that could play Champions League football. You've then also got this rumor that like West Ham might just put 35k, 35 million quid in and potentially just buy him outright. And I don't know, maybe that's a slightly better, more prospect if he's disgruntled. I don't really see that being the case. I also those are just kind of like, again, it's soft rumors from what I think is more fan theories than anything else. But if he does go, we are left with him, Wood, and Quasi. Quasi we just haven't seen, and I kind of expected to see him tonight, if I'm totally honest. But I thought, they want to build this partnership up between the two of them. But it's not going to stop any of the noise and the worry that him and Wood are the our two centre backs. And I think there's going to be a lot more worry around him than Wood. And I don't like that, because I think that he's, proven to be a good captain and is trying his best and stuff. But when you allow a mistake like that and another mistake, in the Watford game as well, you're not going to stop that noise. That's two pretty large mistakes in 2 games in quite quick succession that have resulted in a lot of people, paying attention, right? And you're going to have to see now, are they going to pull out the checkbook and get somebody else? Or are they going to try and just, But again, none of this is put to bed until the window closes shut and we know whether or not Taylor Harwood-Bellis is a Saints player.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. It's such a pain to have a conversation about that in this game rather than us attacking a quite weak West Ham side, where instead we gave a debut and 2 goals, right?
Yeah.
It's like, number 66. Like, come on.
Okay. I mean, you're right. Just the squad numbers of the entire West Ham lineup really speaks volumes to how much better we should have been doing. Despite that, and I mean, you and maybe others might write this off as just copium or some nonsense, but I've been rather vocal on my thoughts about the Carabao Cup, right? And nothing else quite speaks volumes like shutting a stand and still not selling out, right? Psychologically speaking, is it just potentially a case of, we don't need to rush to panic stations because we lost 4-1. It's just that the players didn't care because nobody else cares, because it's a rubbish competition that's just going to add more fixtures into the schedule.
Do you think that is how major teams become successful? Do you think that Manchester City, I understand that they can put out a youth squad that are probably higher caliber than some of the squads they come up in the early rounds, which is why they're able to do that. But I think that, I know that it's quite cynical to say that everything's important, but if you have a manager come out actively and say to everybody in this press conference, we want to win this game, we're going to try and win.
Yeah.
And then behind closed doors be like, doesn't really matter that much, lads.
No, I don't even think that. I think that Tonda believed that he wanted to win, and I think that the side that he picked shows to me that is his mentality going into the game. And I'm not talking about the messaging that's been given to the players, but we talked, extensively last season about how mentality and mental edge means so much more at this level because those margins are so fine. Is it just that much harder to get yourself fired up, to care, to reach those, sensational levels that you need to get to beat a decent team in this league when you're in a half empty stadium, and it's pretty apparent that does anyone really, it's not the same atmosphere that we got at St Mary's this past Saturday. It's not going to be the same atmosphere that we get at St Mary's this Saturday coming. It's notably different. Is that, going to make enough of a psychological mental impact to not excuse this by any stretch of the imagination, but, go some way to explaining why maybe some of the players just switched off more?
I guess, but in the same sense of, we're playing against what for a lot of that game was a West Ham youth squad with quite strong players.
That just means that they're hungrier, right?
But then I would expect that from Wellington. I would expect that from Tom Fellows. Tom Fellows wants to cement his place, play like it. Obama is trying to, we know, basically an understudy to Carl Aaron, and he wants to get in front. So, he needs to put away those chances. Akchukwu broken through and has got now a full start alongside Bragg, who is breaking through, who I would expect more, basically, is where I'm at. And
Yeah.
I'd expect more from the senior players, because if you've got a group of players that's like, I can't be bothered. Well, what's the point of wasting Leo Cienza? What is the point of wasting all of those minutes on like Finn Azaz and Flynn Downs coming on if we're then just like kind of like not bother? And
Yeah,
again, a
I
lot
mean,
of that,
I
and
don't disagree with that. I just think,
defensively, I get it, but like I think that if you are being told one thing and you are being kind of like pushed towards one thing, and you decide that, well, I can't really be bothered because it's the Carabao Cup and you're not treating it as seriously, then that means, in my opinion, there's already a disconnect between what you're being told and informed by management and what you actually think and what you agree, which isn't going to help with the whole idea of the noise of like, the trumpets get louder for Tonga every loss we have.
I
Which
kind
is
of
ridiculous,
thought of it as more subconscious than that. I'm not saying that players are actively coming into this game thinking it doesn't matter. I just think that, maybe in
you
those
can't get the
moments
psychological
in the
edge,
game.
right?
Yeah.
Like, there's at one point we're singing you sit down away, like how crap must you be? You sit down away, and then we're having to kind of like try and rile the crowd up. But you're right, having partly an empty stadium and putting the prices at 25 quid, closing a whole stand, having actively noticeable empty seats probably does have, to an extent, a slight bit of an impact. But at the same time, when you're in like the midst of playing the game, do you think that like the defensive error is caused by you looking up and being like, "Oh, I wish there was more people watching me"?
No, I don't
No,
think it's as clear cut as that. I just think psychologically speaking, like just the way you're mentally switched on is probably different in a game full of a roaring St Mary's than in a game in half empty St Mary's, right? Like Jack Stevens probably, or I don't know, maybe he doesn't, but potentially finds just that extra bit of oomph and absolutely clouts that clearance out of the stadium instead of straight to one of their players, right? Just
but then he did that at Watford, and we had a whole away stand that was screaming his name, and it's so I again, if you're putting it down into basic human terms, I think that we have a tiredness from the weekend. I think we don't have full rotation options at centre back, apparently, because we're never apparently going to play Quasi again, and we seem to need to bring more people in. And say this till this Taylor Harwood-Bellis situation is sorted out. This is the piece of the puzzle, right? People are saying, "Well, get out your checkbook and buy a centre back," but they won't necessarily want to do that until they've resolved whatever's going on with Harwood-Bellis, because if he then stays and they've bought an additional centre-back, then they need to try and maybe find a home for Quasi. And it's like, oh, we'll just find him a loan. But it's not as easy as that. If it was that easy, we would have already done it with Ramsdale, for example, right? Where so I think that, I think maybe you think it's a psychological thing. I maybe think it's just a hangover from the fact that they're all tired from the weekend, and maybe you shouldn't have started two players that probably were up for it, and maybe, like you said, subconsciously were a bit tired, whether or not it's because the atmosphere was a bit flatter, whether it's the fact they've played at the weekend and they're not quite back into the groove. Maybe it's the fact that they know that what's, as you pointed out, from a psychological perspective in the background, what's at stake. This isn't we're at -1 points and you're going to get absolutely crucified by the fans for losing. What actually happened was there wasn't enough fans by the 95th minute in the stadium to moan at you, because the vast majority of them saw the scoreline after Bowen's fourth goal and went, I'm going to go home. So, this is, you haven't had the, say, reception you'd get if you'd lost 4-1 at home to West Ham on a league game that would have maybe pulled us out of the relegation zone, right? So I guess what's actually happened, Greg, is I've come round to your methodology and agree.
Look, I mean, I can't sit here and defend that performance anyway, right?
Well, okay, so where do we go?
I'm not going to write it off as just Carabao Cup and it's done. Although part of me wants to, because it is just the Carabao Cup. It's still a performance that's going to cause concerns, and the only way we can really shut that up is to go on and decisively beat a Millwall team who historically we struggle against, currently are on an incredible run of form and sit at the top of the table, and are going to have watched us play West Ham tonight and be well up for it, right? So I don't know. Might make for a potentially difficult weekend.
We won against Stoke, but I think a lot of people had a lot of questions about the performance, right? Like even one of my friends who's non-football related were like, "Hey, did Saints lose at the weekend?" Because it was a bit sort of quiet on the way out from the, when they were walking through Woolston. I'm like, no, like we won, 3-1. Like I don't know, maybe it kind of worn off by that point. But I know that you were buzzing, I was buzzing, so it was a good thing. It's just a bit of a dose of reality, and I just think it's also the manner in which we lost was just a bit rubbish. Like I think that it's the things that people already had concerns about, right? And they are exacerbated by the fact that that is the areas where mistakes were made. And I don't just think it's entirely down to Stevens, and I don't think it's entirely Perez had a bit of a mistake, but that was after pulling off an absolute worldie at the beginning of the game, right? Managed to save a decent shot at that point, and we weren't able to finish our chances because we had players that were a little bit rusty who haven't, been, firing goals scoring at World Cups like Cole Aaron. So yeah, do we just put it down to a one-off because it's the Carabao Cup? Hopefully, but I think the problem is that if it wasn't laying bare concerns people already had, I think that it would be easier to just move on, right? If it was just kind of like the kids got battered and we downed tools a little bit, and we tried out a centre back pairing with like Kaya Sander and Wood, and it just didn't work. The fact that it's like if Taylor Harbour-Bellis goes, our two starting centre backs that kind of missed many opportunities, a set piece, a thing we used to struggle with quite a lot, that came back to haunt us, and then a mistake, a thing that individual mistakes was the reason for our downfall in the Premier League. It's all of those factors combined that will cause concern for people, and it's going to be entirely up to them to resolve that problem. If you want not to be moaned at for score a goal, like it's just a bit crap in it for a Tuesday night. And if you've paid 25 quid to go and see that, you got to see it pretty nice Cienza goal. That's one of the positives, right? Everyone talking about how Cienza's off, he's not really in it, he's not the same Cienza, and then he does the Cienza thing on a Carabao Cup game that isn't really that important. He shows the kind of player he still is. So there are positives there. As I said, I thought Adozie looked really sprightly. I think that was a good demonstration of how good a player Manning is. How we maybe missed him a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
The midfield wasn't the end of the world. I think it's going to be nice when we have Yanda back, but I understand why people are like, hey, whip out the checkbook and buy some players. But also the reality of the situation is what they don't want is the window to slam shut and have a bunch of extra players they don't know what to do with on top of new signings, right? That's going to be the worst case scenario because financially,
it's a really tricky week, man. All the way through until our literal game in the middle of the deadline.
We're going to have a transfer. We're going to have a transfer episode that by the end of the recording of the episode, it might be null and void, right?
Yeah,
we already had that once because we left it checks notes a day after weeks of nothing. But now, even if we leave it a couple hours, it's not really going to matter because so much can change in this small period of time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe we do an emergency one. Who knows? But
look, I think on the whole, my opinion that I'm taking from this evening is not quite at panic stations yet. And
I just kind of wish I didn't watch it.
I said after the Watford game, right? Yeah, look, they were off the pace, but everyone gets one, and then we judge. And I think by the grace of this not being a 1, this being a generous 0.4, we go again on Saturday and see where we're at. But it doesn't take you into that game with any level of confidence, which is, I guess, the problem. That's momentum,
the
right?
issue, right? So, if it was all the kids and it was the kids that lost, that would be it. It wasn't. That's part of what the concern is. But there are people that had worse nights than us. Brentford beat Birmingham 6-1, and Peterborough beat Watford 5-1. So, swings and roundabouts. Stoke were knocked out on penalties against Hull. We could have had a much worse night. As I said, from a personal perspective, obviously I do a daily Saints podcast with you. We try and catch as much of the football as we can. Just kind of wish I just didn't bother. That's how it is. And
as a closing thought to leave you on before we wrap up the episode, Zach, we talked briefly in the preview, and I think I said to you, this could be like the Gillingham game, and you said it won't be as bad as that. I just reflected on that, and that we only conceded 3 that night. So,
yeah, but the difference is this is previous. This is West Ham Premier League.
Yeah.
Regardless, their youth squad's still going to be quite
Squad
strong.
numbers 66, 61, 58.
You're right. But I guess the other thing with the Gillingham game is like we never saw Gineppo again. We never saw Lianco again. Yeah. I think with this game, Stevens isn't going to go. We're not just going to ship him off after this, a mistake or two in a couple of games. We're not going to see, a Dozy shipped out or Matsky or maybe Akachukwu gets a loan. Maybe Bragg gets a loan before the window closes. Who knows? But I also think that they probably have a chance to be around the squad. And, Akachukwu rightly had a decent preseason and has played now. Maybe he gets a go, but I
guess also a thought that might have been more pertinent had we not, conceded 2 more goals after that point. But quite the recovery from their goalkeeper, right?
Well, it was the 5 minutes added on time that allowed everybody that extra bit of time to get home from St Mary's. So I guess thanks for that to offer them. But looking at him, I do probably think it was genuine cramp and, managed to sort himself out. Because
I've watched enough pro wrestling to know what selling looks like. Just because he started selling it early doesn't make it any less fake.
Yeah, but also then you've got the West Ham.
That's like sitting in the office the day before you need the day off tomorrow and going, I've got a real scratch in my throat, laying the foundations.
This reminds me of Rob Green being like, I've never known a goalkeeper to get cramp in literally my entire life. But it might be the case. But either way, it was funny to watch them protest when they had to take another player off and be like, "Why isn't he back on there?" And it's like, cause it's the amount of time that he spent fanning around on the floor, mate. Like that's the reality. But I'm not going to lie, Greg. I'm not devastated about us going out from the cup. I am concerned about momentum, hopefully, and what that means is that we hopefully need to go into Millwall and just win.
Let's say we go and we smash Millwall. No one remembers this game next week.
No,
is where I'm at.
No, you're right, but that means that there's a lot of extra pressure on Millwall. When I said the weight of expectation is West Ham need to win this game more, that is accurate, and maybe some of their youth get a start now. But it was. I think the frustrating thing is the manner in which we lost has exacerbated things that people were already concerned about, and that's frustrating.
I mean, that said, also. Right, the 3rd and 4th goals are almost directly related to throwing the kitchen sink at it and not really having many other defensive players on the pitch, right? So, 4-1, scoreline that flatters them because we were trying to open up and push for it at the end more than anything. But still, too many mistakes, not good enough going forward. Still no urgency at the back. Plenty of reasons to be concerned, but I don't know. Look, we've got plenty of time to ruminate on it now and head towards the weekend. But look, that is all we have got time for this evening. So thank you, everyone, for joining to us in this group therapy session. Let us know your thoughts and your opinions on the game in the comments and on the socials. We are Daily Saints Pod absolutely everywhere. X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Everywhere, hit us up and let us know. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about transfers. But until then, everyone, have as good of a day as you can after that nonsense. And we will see you then.
This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg.